بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. As you are aware, we have, with the grace of Allah the Almighty Azza wa Jal, finished what is known as Babul Ibadat, and this translates to the chapter of forms of worship, because the jurors divided the fiqh into two categories. One that deals with forms of worship such as salat, prayers, zakat, fasting, and pilgrimage. This is between you and Allah Azza wa Jal. These are the pillars of Islam. Then they moved on to speak about what is known as Bab al-Mu'amalat, which deals with transactions. And usually they have this to deal with transactions such as selling and buying, such as farming, hiring, firing, how to deal with other forms of transactions such as halal transactions, selling and buying, and also haram transactions, riba and the likes, and the transactions that are invalid by nature. Then they went on to speak about marriage, divorce, custody, maintenance, etc. All of these things. Among the things that they usually mention is jihad. And usually they put it at the end of the books of fiqh. But in our book, we have it in between. And this might be for the sole reason that jihad is a combination of both. When people perform jihad, this is the highest level of sacrifice, which there are a lot of misconceptions revolving around it. And we will get to talk about this later on if Allah Azza wa Jal wills it. So we begin now in the section that deals with transactions. First of all, definition. What is the linguistic meaning of jihad? Jihad means to put an effort, to strive, to struggle. And this is what anyone thinks of when they hear the words of jihad. And in the Islamic legislative meaning, it covers everything you do for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal. So yes, I'm struggling, I'm having jihad to open this mobile phone. This is not for the sake of Allah. But if I struggle to learn fiqh, this is jihad. If I struggle to obey my parents, this is jihad. If I struggle to defend the reputation of Islam on social media, this is jihad. So anything that you do to make the word of Allah supreme and above all, this is considered to be jihad. Now, the highest form of jihad is to fight, physically fight the enemy. Allah Azza wa Jal says in the Qur'an, and it's here with you. You'll find it in the beginning. Repel evil with that which is best. idfa' billati hiya ahsan. We are fully aware of all that they say. So to repel, you can do that with your speech. But sometimes you have to do that through violence, which is not recommended or preferred for itself. But when someone attacks you, you cannot fight them back with words only. You have to fight them back physically to defend yourself. And no one on earth would say that such violence is not recommended. You have to defend yourself. No one says, okay, be the better son of Adam and get killed. Defend yourself, defend your honor. Don't allow thieves to take your money. You have to put up a fight. But Islam tells us that jihad is not as it is portrayed nowadays in the media. Jihad is a very high level of worshipping Allah Azza wa Jal, because we do jihad only through the means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordered us. Meaning that we don't become impulsive and fight when there is danger upon the Muslim community. During the times of Mecca, the Prophet stayed there alayhi salatu wasalam for 13 years. His companions being oppressed, tortured, and in some cases even killed. And they come to the Prophet ﷺ complaining, let us fight back, let us defend ourselves. And the Prophet used to tell them, I was not commanded to do so. Therefore, when Muslims are a minority, they must not resort to any type of physical violence, because this is the way that they were told to tolerate, to be patient. And this is not hypocrisy. People tend to be quick in labeling the Muslims. Ah, look at them. When they're weak in a minority, they don't fight. Once they gain power and they become strong, they start fighting people. And this is not true. And even if it was true, where is the fault in this? When you're powerful and strong, human nature tells you to dictate your will upon others, even if it was wrong. Look at the superpowers and all the damage they've introduced to the world. Weapons of mass destruction. Invade the whole country and kill over 1 million civilians in 2 countries over an alleged weapons of mass destruction. And then they said, oops, sorry, we didn't find anything. Maybe we got the wrong info or the wrong intel. And who would convey your apology to the dead? No one. So these are oppressors. These are transgressors. These are countries that do not believe in Allah and they have their own agenda. This is nothing even close to the Islamic way of defending humanity and enforcing the high ethics of Islam, which we will come again to discuss, because whenever the topic of jihad comes, so many ideas dwell in our minds which are usually imposed by the Western non-Islamic media, and sometimes also through the Arab or the Muslims who pretend to be Muslims but they're ignorant, and they just as well tarnish the reputation of Islam. So jihad is not only physical, and this is why scholars say that jihad is divided into 5 types. So whenever someone says Muslims have jihad, they're violent people, they always kill and slaughter and behead people, I said, wait. In Islam, jihad is one, the jihad we do against our own selves, when we compel ourselves to refrain from doing evil, committing sins, when we compel ourselves to study Islamic knowledge and spreading it all over. And this is what the 4 principles of Imam Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab in his beautiful book Al-Qawa'id al-Arba'a talks about. There is the jihad of the devil, of Satan, who keeps on whispering and telling us to do things, and he attacks us through two frontiers, through desires and lusts and through doubts and misconceptions. Desires and lusts are fought by patience and tolerance, when you refrain from doing it, while doubts and misconceptions are fought with knowledge, with yaqeen, certainty. Then we have the 3rd type of jihad, which is the jihad of the hypocrites. So they're Muslims and they claim to be one of us, and they speak like us and they live among us, but they intend to derail Islam and to undermine the community and the society of Muslims through their evil deeds, pretending they're Muslims. And this is why Allah Azza wa Jal usually combines them with the disbelievers. How do we fight them? We fight them, as Allah said in the Qur'an, that we fight them with the Qur'an. Do not obey the disbelievers, but strive most vigorously against them with the Qur'an. The hypocrites are exposed when you refute their allegations and accusations, and this is done through the Qur'an, through the Sunnah, through explaining to the people that what they're saying is not true and that it is false. Then we have the 4th type of jihad, which is the jihad of the sinners among the Muslims. They're not hypocrites, but they love their desires. They love to party. They love to do haram things, free mixing, etc. To counter all of that, we have to make jihad. Sometimes by writing, sometimes by speaking out. Sometimes we have to resort to using our hands to prevent evil from taking place. But this also has conditions, that no one can just simply intervene and use force when he is not authorized to do so. And finally, the 5th category is the jihad of the disbelievers. And this takes place with all types of weaponry a Muslim has. It takes place with your heart. So you hate what they're doing. And this is the least of jihad possible, which unfortunately a lot of the Muslims don't possess. Due to the media, due to weakness of Iman, they tend to think that the disbelievers have a right to invade so-and-so country. They have a right to ban women from wearing the niqab. They have rights to do this or to do that. This is a very serious sign of hypocrisy. And Muslims who feel this way, they are close, if not fully fledged hypocrites. Because the least possible and accepted level of iman in their heart has vanished. So we do jihad against the disbelievers with our hearts. We do jihad with our tongues, and this represents what we write, what we call for, social media, anything that is used to fight off, to repel the disbelievers through an honest and sincere and truthful word. Then we have jihad with wealth, money, and jihad with the soul, the body. And the best of jihad is when a person goes out with his wealth and with his own health and comes back with nothing. He dies a martyr in the cause of Allah, and his wealth is gone also in the cause of Allah the Almighty. So for 13 years, the Prophet ﷺ was ordered not to fight back. And this is the utmost wisdom. Because if the Muslims, who were a handful, fought back a full nation of Quraysh, they would have annihilated Islam, and that was the end of it. But this religion is divine. It's from Allah, who knows the past, the present, and the future, who knows what did not happen, how it were to have happened if it was meant to happen. So Allah told them not to fight. Once the Prophet ﷺ was ordered to migrate to Medina, and they separated from the disbelievers, having their own community, having their own city and nation now, a sovereign nation of their own, here the tables have been turned over the heads of the disbelievers. Allah ordered them to fight. And the fighting in the beginning was simply targeting their financial power. So the financial might of Quraysh was first attacked. All caravans going to Syria and coming back from Syria were intercepted. And this hit the disbelievers most in their wealth. Haters of Islam would say, oh, look at them disrupting the peace. They are crooks and thieves. And no, they're not. They tried to kill the Prophet ﷺ and assassinate him in his house in Mecca. They took all the wealth of the Muslims before allowing them to leave and migrate to Medina. So who are the thieves and the robbers? The Muslims did that in order to compensate what was taken from them. When the disbelievers started to attack Medina, trying to invade it, trying to annihilate Islam, for 5 years, the Prophet ﷺ was only defending it and trying to call people to Islam. After these 5 years, when it was almost hopeless for them to come to their senses, then the Prophet took the initiative ﷺ, and started attacking them. If you wait for 5 years and they're not relentant, they don't want to stop, then the only thing, the best defense is to attack. This was commanded in the Qur'an. Allah says in the Qur'an, permission to fight has been given to those who are being fought because they were wronged. And indeed, Allah is competent to give them victory. They are those who have been evicted from their homes without right, only because they say, our Lord is Allah. And this is true. Why did they fight the Muslims? Simply because they say, our Lord is one, and He is Allah. And were it not that Allah checks the people, some by means of others, they would have been demolished. They would have been demolished monasteries, churches, synagogues, and mosques in which the name of Allah is much mentioned. And Allah will surely support those who support Him. Indeed, Allah is powerful and exalted in might. And they are, whom Allah will give support to, those are those who, if we give them authority in the land, establish prayer and give zakat and enjoin what is right and forbid what is evil. So there are 3 reasons mentioned for justifying the permission to jihad. The first reason is that they were prosecuted unjustly and forced to leave their homeland. And by the way, this was not only then, it continues, especially against the Muslims, worldwide. And we don't have to give names. Just turn on your TV screens and look at the oppression that the Muslims are facing nowadays. Either directly as a result of the disbelievers attacking them, or indirectly through the agents and the proxies of the disbelievers among the hypocrites who claim to be Muslims. Also, one of the reasons of jihad is to secure other religions to worship their Lord. Islam does not force people to become Muslims. You want to stay practicing your religion? This is up to you. Christians have been always living among the Muslims as Christians, being protected, being defended whenever there was an invasion. It's not their responsibility to defend themselves. The Muslims defend and protect the Jews and the Christians because this is part of our religion. It's mentioned in the Qur'an. It's mentioned in the Sunnah. So many people don't know this. And some may not believe it, but the Qur'an is there in black and white. You can read it. So, Islam protects humanity through jihad. Thirdly, that the ultimate purpose of jihad and victory is to establish Islam in the land. And this results for the people to attend regularly to their prayers, to give charity, to enjoin the doing of what is right and forbid the doing of what is evil and wrong. These are the main reasons and justifications for a permission to perform jihad that was given by Allah Azza wa Jal. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made fighting for his cause a duty. Where Allah says in Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah kutiba alaykum al-qital wa huwa kurhun lakum. Fighting is ordained for you even though it is hateful to you. Nobody loves to fight. Nobody is bloodthirsty. But if it is ordained by Allah Azza wa Jal and it's done for a legitimate cause with the conditions, and I always highlight, underline, use bold font when I say that once the conditions are fulfilled, because not every jihad is a legitimate jihad. It has to go through the Islamic window that has a number of conditions to it. And fighting becomes mandatory because the vast majority of scholars say that jihad or fighting is a communal obligation. It is not mandatory upon me. It's not fard upon me to go for jihad. And I mean by jihad, the fighting in the cause of Allah Azza wa Jal. This is not mandatory. What is mandatory? That one, when the ruler calls for full deployment, the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said, وَإِذَا اسْتُنْفِرْتُمْ فَانْفِرُوا. This is an obligation. When the Muslim ruler tells you to come and fight, it's an obligation. You cannot say, okay, let me check my calendar. Maybe I have few meetings, but then I'll try to do my best. Nope. If you are and the Muslim ruler makes a full deployment, you are obliged to come. This is an obligation. Secondly, when a person possesses skills that the Muslims lack, yet need his skills for battle, as in the case of an Air Force pilot. So there isn't full deployment, but my expertise are required. They need someone who is an Air Force pilot to fly the airplanes. Without air defense, air power, they will lose the war. So here, I have to. It becomes mandatory upon me to go. And you can say the same when it comes to doctors. Without their help, patients, soldiers, wounded would die. So they have to go, etc. Number 3, it becomes mandatory when the enemy forces attack the Muslim city. So I'm in a Muslim city, and while I'm in my vacation, having fun, the kafirs, the disbelievers invade that city. I can't just say, okay guys, it's fun visiting your country, I'm going home. No, now the fight is on and I am in that city, it becomes a mandatory duty upon me to defend it. And finally, if a person who is able to fight happens to be on the site, like our friend earlier, but the difference is that this guy is passing by. And if we were to reinterpret, redefine the third category, if the enemy attacks a Muslim city, the inhabitants of that city, it becomes mandatory upon them to do jihad. And some scholars say even children, women, elderly, they all must defend their own city against invasion. So the fourth category falls under a person who is walking by, traveling through, or was in a holiday and the fights took place. I think we will stop around here, inshallah, and we will take your questions. Hopefully you'll find them. Okay. Question number 1. It is from Afrina Tony. She says, Assalamu alaikum. Is this allowed to pray for anyone who commits suicide? So if a Muslim killed himself, can we ask Allah for forgiveness for him? Well, we know that whoever kills himself, he is bound to hellfire. And the scholars disputed upon his fate. Some said that he will abide, he will go to hellfire forever. And some said, which is the most authentic opinion, is that he is destined to go to hell, but at the end of the day, it is Allah's divine will. So whatever Allah Azza wa Jal wills will happen to him. Because he did not commit shirk, he did not associate others with Allah, he was not a kafir, he did not an infidel. So if Allah wishes, if Allah wills it, he can forgive all of his sins and admits him to Jannah, or let him spend and do time in hell until he's purified and then admitted to Jannah. In the Sunnah, whenever the Prophet ﷺ was presented a corpse that the person killed himself, so that he would offer janazah prayer, the funeral prayer, the Prophet would refrain from praying on it, and he would say, you pray upon your brother. So he made a person who killed himself a brother. He did not make him a kafir, and he ordered the Muslims to pray, but not him. And him not praying illustrates that the gravity of that man's sin, and that the Prophet, as the Muslim ruler and leader, cannot offer salat upon him, but it is an obligation upon the others. So yes, you can ask Allah for forgiveness for a person who had killed himself, and you can make dua for him as well. Fida Chaudhry says, what is your time for stoning on Yawm al-Nahr? The time for stoning on Yawm al-Nahr, the majority say, is after Fajr prayer. But the most authentic opinion is that you are entitled to begin throwing once you reach Mina. So if I were to accompany women or children, accompany them to Mina from Muzdalifah, due to I'm with them in the same bus, they are allowed to throw. And I am also allowed to throw, even if we reach there 2 hours before Fajr. However, scholars say that it is best to wait until Fajr breaks and then throw. But again, this is not the most authentic opinion. You can throw as soon as you reach. When does it end? Some say it ends at sunset. And some even extend it to the middle of the night. And the most authentic opinion is that you can delay it according to what is more convenient to you, but it must not be done after Adhan of Fajr of the following day. So yes, you can do it in the evening without any problem, inshallah. His second question is, can the Hujjaj, the pilgrims, pray Salat shortened and combined during the days of Tashriq? We said before that combining prayers is done only in Muzdalifah, and before that in Arafat. So it's only the 9th day where you combine Asr to Dhuhr and combine Maghrib to Isha. But on the 8th day of Dhul Hijjah, which is Yawm al-Tarwiyah, and the last 3 days, which are the Ayyam al-Tashriq, 11th, 12th, and 13th, while staying in Mina, you must shorten your prayers, the 4 rak'ahs you pray them too, but you must pray each prayer on time. You do not combine the prayers at all. Haslin Fatima says, as you said, and underline this, as you said, due to lockdown, men can perform Salatul Eid at home. Can women in the house join them? I personally don't remember saying that. I had said that before. What I remember is that in our course, the Islamic Fiqh, when we spoke about praying Eid prayer for those who miss it or wake up late, the majority of scholars, the Maliki school, the Shafi'i school, the Hanbali school, say that it can be made up, but of course without the sermon. So yes, people can pray at home, or when they come late to the gathering, to the congregation of Eid, and the Imam has already prayed it, they can pray it individually by offering 2 rak'ahs, 7 takbir in the beginning, 5 takbir in the second, and that's it. However, I also remember stating to you that the Hanafi school of thought say that this congregation, this salat, was made to be offered in congregation. Therefore, it cannot be offered individually. Or when latecomers arrive, pray it on their own. And this is the choice of Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah and also Shaykh Muhammad ibn Salih ibn Uthaymeen, may Allah have mercy on their souls. And this is the most authentic opinion, that it cannot be offered separately or individually or at homes, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. Now you quoted me that I had said that. So I would appreciate it if you can send me the link where I said that so that I can retract it and correct it. Fatima Afrin says, do men have to wash the chin when doing wudu with long beard, or is it sufficient to just run the wet hands through the beard, including sideburns, after washing the face? When you have a beard like mine, it begins from here. So this area, which is the chin, is covered completely. So what to do? I wash my face and the water goes in, but not thoroughly. And at the end, with wet fingers, I do this. So this ensures that the whole beard is washed, but not soaked in water. It's not doing this and putting water on it and soaking it, or putting it in a plate and going for a couple of minutes. This is not the Sunnah. The Sunnah is to wash your face, and at the end, with water in your hand, not necessarily scoops of water, but wet hands, you just thoroughly do this to ensure that the water that already came in with washing the face and penetrated some of it, it goes inside well. This is all what you have to do. And you should not, of course it's not for you, Fatima, a man should not open the door for OCD of Satan's whispers to mess up with his mind, spending minutes and minutes, maybe more than that, doing wudu, which is a process that should not take more than a minute and a half. Antonio says, I just finished Bulugh al-Maram, Hadith 1345, narrated by Umar radiallahu anhu, when the Prophet ﷺ raised his hands in supplication, he did not lower them until he wiped his face with them. Could you please clarify? The hadith is not authentic. And I did not go to check it out when I read your question, because this is something that we've been talking about for the past like 40, 30 years. The hadith is not authentic. Now, let me ask you a question. As a Muslim, me being a Muslim, what would I lose if I tell people that this hadith is authentic, and after you're making your dua, you do this? Would there be any burden on me? Would I lose an arm or a leg? No. So I have nothing personal against this issue. If the hadith is authentic, I would say 100% do it, and I will be the first one to do it. But the hadith is not authentic. Ibn Abdul Barr, one of the great scholars of Islam, said, only the ignorance wipe their faces after dua. لا يفعله إلا الجهال عندنا. And if the hadith is not authentic, then how can we advise people to do something which is not authentic? Okay, MD Asif. And I always thought that MD stands for medical doctor. But then someone told me, no, the people in the subcontinent make short the name Muhammad into MD. And this is inappropriate. If your name is compound of two names, like many people, in some, even in Arabia, so his name is Tariq, they don't call their son Tariq when he is born. They say his name is Muhammad Tariq. His name is Muhammad Ismail. His name is Muhammad Asim. They add Muhammad for barakah. This is wrong. Give your child only one name. You love the name Muhammad? Call him Muhammad. You love the name Tariq? Just call him Tariq. But don't use two names to confuse people, and definitely don't shorten your name into MD. Says, what to do this Ramadan? The masjids are closed. How do we pray Taraweeh? Should we pray 8 rak'ah or 20? Is Taraweeh and Tahajjud the same, or we should pray Tahajjud after Taraweeh? MD Muhammad Asif, if you asked me this question on Twitter, I would have most likely ignored it or blocked you, because you're entitled only to ask one question. You ask, mashallah, 6 or 7, which requires a whole lecture. But let me start by saying this. Yesterday, I was fortunate and blessed by Allah to give an hour plus lecture to our brothers in Chennai, India. And it was about what to do during Ramadan at times of lockdown. It's on YouTube. You can find it, inshallah. And I spoke there about the things you can do. Akhi, Ramadan is not Taraweeh. People highlight a number of things, and they consider doing them during the month of Ramadan is the top thing to do, and we can fool around the rest of the day, which is wrong. Ramadan is not only fasting. It's not only giving your zakat. It's not only offering Taraweeh and then later on Tahajjud at the last 10 nights of Ramadan. It's a combination of so many things. It's a combination of dhikr, of dua, of charity, of feeding the poor, of being kind, of being submissive to Allah Azza wa Jal, of remembering that you are a servant and not a master, and you fulfill your master's commands to you. It's a package deal. Taraweeh is one part of it, which we are all saddened by the fact that we are deprived from praying it in congregation in the masjid. But this is one of Allah's tests in a series of tests to us. So we have to pass the test, inshallah. Pray home until the lockdown is uplifted with the grace of Allah, and I pray to Allah that it is done soon so that we can go back to our masjids. You can pray individually, but it is best to pray with your family members. It strengthens the bond. You can recite the surahs you know by heart, and if you wish, you can have the Qur'an held in your hand and you read from it. The Prophet used to pray 11 rak'ahs and sometimes 13 rak'ahs for night prayer. You can pray that, or if you feel that increasing the number of rak'ahs and shortening the duration of prayer is more convenient for you, rather than praying long rak'ahs and restricting the number to 11, this is permissible. How many rak'ahs at most? The sky is the limit. It was not prescribed. So praying at 11, 13, 20, 40, it's up to you. And is Taraweeh and Tahajjud the same? No. Taraweeh is only prayed during Ramadan in congregation. If you're not praying it in congregation, then this is regular night prayer. If you're praying it in the last third of the night, this is Tahajjud. And it is best for you to postpone and delay your Taraweeh and pray it at the time of Tahajjud, because this is more beloved to Allah. But if it's not convenient and you would want to pray it at the beginning of the night, totally legit. So I hope this answers your question. Number 7, WZ Mubashir. Can I ask if what is the rule of Aqiqah? So Aqiqah is a sacrifice we offer to Allah to express our gratitude. It is 2 rams or 2 goats for a baby boy, and 1 ram or 1 goat for a baby girl. And it's an issue of dispute whether it's mandatory or highly recommended. And the most authentic opinion, it is highly recommended and not mandatory. And some say it is mandatory upon those who are able to afford it. And it is recommended to the extent that if your parent did not offer this for you, once you're grown up, it is recommended that you do it for yourself or on behalf of yourself. Even if it's the duty of your father, but you can do it as well if he missed that, and Allah knows best. Abdul Rahman says, I have a cue or a question. On throwing the 7 stones part in Hajj, what will a person with no hands do if his hands were gone because of some accident or something else? He should delegate this. So if this person was performing Hajj with me, he says, Sheikh Asim, can you throw on my behalf? I said, most likely, yes. Like pregnant women who fear for their pregnancy, they can delegate. Like elderly who are in their 70s or 80s or on a wheelchair, they can delegate. So likewise, the brother can delegate without any problem. Isra Hassan says, if a woman has a cycle on night of decree, so she gets her menses on Laylatul Qadr, the night of decree, and she wanted to read the Qur'an, pray, and do all the acts of worship to get the reward but her cycle got in the way and she feels sad and useless to miss out. Is there a way to get the reward, or it's not possible? First of all, Isra. You remember the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. And this is a glad tiding to those who are punctual with their ibadah. Someone who is continuously fasting Mondays and Thursdays, continuously offering night prayer. The Prophet gave him the glad tidings when he said, Allah would reward a person when he falls sick or travels with whatever he used to do when he was healthy and residing. So those who, like you, Esra, every single Ramadan, the night of decree, Laylatul Qadr, she prays night prayer, tahajjud, taraweeh, recites the Qur'an, engages in dua and dhikr. But this year, she got her menses. She shouldn't be sad or depressed because Allah will give her the reward as usual. Not only that, the only thing that you cannot do, Isra, is praying. You can read the Qur'an. If you want to read it from the Qur'an itself, you have to wear gloves. If you want to read it from a mobile or from an iPad or a tablet or a computer, feel more than free to do that without any problem. You can make dhikr as usual. You can make a lot of dua as usual. So the only thing you may miss is praying night prayer. And as I stated earlier, that Allah will reward you because this was your custom every single year. So don't be sad or depressed. Shabina Miraj says, can we sacrifice if someone is sick to give poor people when the person gets better? Shabina, if you are referring to a vow, then this is highly not recommended. It is disliked. When a person falls sick, his loved ones rush to ask Allah Azza wa Jal for cure. And this is legit. Once they put a price for that, this becomes a vow, a nadhr. And nadhr is disliked in Islam. So they say, oh Allah, if you cure my sick person, my sick son, my sick relative, I will slaughter a sheep as a sacrifice for you and feed the poor. The Prophet ﷺ forbade us from making such vows because we are obligating ourselves to do something that Allah did not oblige us to do. And the Prophet ﷺ described this as being means of extracting wealth from a stingy person. So it is Allah who is extracting your money against your will because you are a miser, a stingy person. When things were good, you never thought of sacrificing anything for the sake of Allah. Now, because you are in hardship, you're trying to negotiate a deal with Allah. Listen, I'll give you a sheep, you cure my child. And this is not at all recommended in Islam. But if you are referring to someone having a sick person, and mashallah, he recovered and he became well after being endangered and in a critical situation. So out of gratitude, we slaughter a sheep and give it to the poor people. This is a highly recommended thing to do, and you're praised for doing it because there's no conditions, there are no strings attached. Faiza Saeed says, 5 years ago we did Hajj and did stoning before Zawal on the third day. Can we still offer sacrifice? So I am presuming that Faiza is asking about an expiation, a fidya. She knows that throwing before the adhan of dhuhr, stoning before the adhan of dhuhr, is invalid. So she's asking now, after 5 years of her Hajj, whether she can expiate this or not. Well, if at the time, Faiza, you were advised by quote unquote real scholars that you can throw before the adhan, then there is no sin on you and the sin on those who gave you this fatwa. But if you simply saw people throwing and those around you who are not scholars, laymen, kept on telling you, no, it's good, you can't do that, and you followed them, then yes, you have to sacrifice a sheep as an expiation in the haram area and give it to the poor around the haram area. Now, there are coupons, I think, sold by a Rajhi bank, where you can buy a coupon and you can delegate them to do this for you. And also in the Islamic Development Bank, IDB, which is the biggest bank, Islamic bank around, not for individuals, but rather for countries and nations, Islamic nations, and they take care of the hadi and the sacrifice taking place, because millions of Muslims slaughter on that day, on the day of Eid, and don't want the meat, don't know how to distribute the meat. They take the meat and they ship it to poor countries, Muslim countries that are in need. So you can do that, inshallah. Finally, Abdul Qadir says, on my prayer calendar, the sunset time is different to what the actual sunset time usually. There's a 2 to 5 minutes difference. Which time do I follow? What counts is the actual time of prayer. Once it's due, you can pray and you can break your fast. So if your prayer calendar was written by the masjid, but you can see clearly that the sun sets totally 2 to 5 minutes before the calendar. This means that those who wrote the calendar wanted to be safe by 2 to 5 minutes. But this is not binding. I don't have to follow this. So if I'm at the coast or at the beach or the Corniche, where the sun sets and I can see it once it disappears. Once it disappears, you can break your fast, even if the adhan was not called, even if the calendar timing is wrong, because this is what Allah ordered you to do. Allah ordered you to break your fast and to pray Maghrib once the sun has set, has disappeared. And it disappeared. What am I waiting for? So, unfortunately, many Islamic centers and masjids tend to put a minute or two just to be safe rather than sorry. Some of them even go to 5 minutes, and this is wrong. And if you know exactly the time of sunset, whether through Google, through websites, even un-Islamic, once they tell you that and they collaborate that the sun sets at this particular minute, and sometimes you can check by visually looking, you can follow that without any problem, insha'Allah azza wa jal. And this was the last question for today's session. Until we meet next Thursday, I leave you fi amanillah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.